Here's a quick refresher on fractions. It'll stay up on Google Classroom and the YouTube channel at all times, so feel free to go back and refresh whenever you need some practice. So in these first two problems, we're adding and subtracting fractions, which means they need a common denominator. So for A, we want to start off by just subtracting 3/5 from both sides. And then since these denominators aren't the same, we want to give them a common denominator. Now in this case, a common denominator is going to be 20. And the way we'd figure this out is just by figuring out what's the least common multiple between 4 and 5. All right, and if you can't figure that out, we can just take one by the other denominator. So times 5 on the top and the bottom. So whatever we do to the bottom of a fraction, we have to do to the top. And then over here, to make this into a 20, we have to do times 4 on the bottom and again on the top. All right, so when we do that, this is going to turn into 15 over 20. And then this one, we have a minus in between these, turns it to 12 on the top, 20 on the bottom. Okay, now at this point, we have two fractions with a common denominator, okay, and we're just going to subtract the two numerators, which are the top ones. So 15 minus 12 is 3 over 20 on the bottom. We want all our fractions fully simplified, so we would check to see if we can reduce this, which we can't, and we're finished. That's our answer. Now in part B, this one has an extra step because we have what's called a mixed number, which is a whole number paired with a fraction. And to start off, we're going to switch this to an improper fraction. So to do that, we take the denominator, we multiply it by the whole number. So 4 times 2 is 8, and then add the numerator. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 1 is 9, numerator, over 4. Okay, denominator stays the same. So really this problem is x minus 9/4 equals 1/3. And now we would do it the same way, except we're adding instead of subtracting. So plus 9/4 on both sides. And again, we have two fractions with different denominators, so we need to give them a common denominator. Okay, so let's just take one, we'll multiply it by the denominator of the other on the top and the bottom. So times 4 on the left, times 3 on the right. This is going to turn into 4/12 plus 27/12. And at this point, since the denominators are the same, we're just going to add these two numerators. And we get 31 over 12. Okay, we want to leave our answers as improper fractions. We wouldn't switch that to a mixed number and say 12 goes into 31 twice with 7 left over. Okay, leave it as 31 over 12. Multiplication and division are these next two. In my opinion, these are the easier two. Now, when we're solving C, there's a bunch of different ways that we can do this. I'm going to do it using cross multiplication because it's my preferred method. All right, so we start off with top left to bottom right. That x goes on the top with a 3. So we have 3x times 4 equals 12x. Now don't forget your equal sign. There's always an equal sign in between these two. Then we have the 5 times the 3, 15. Okay, now last step is divide by 12 and reduce the fraction. Okay, so 12 is gone. We have x equals 15 over 12. We can divide both of those by 3 and we get 5 over 4 as our answer. Now we can also do this as, say, multiplying by reciprocal. If you prefer that, that's fine. In part D, again, we want to switch this to an improper fraction. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 on the top is 7 over 2. So we have x divided by 7 over 2 equals 5 over 2. Now there's a saying for division of fractions. Keep it, switch it, flip it. Okay, we keep that first fraction or number how it is. Okay, the sign, we're going to switch it to multiplication. So this division sign is going to switch to multiplication and then flip it for that second fraction. Okay, so this whole problem is going to turn into x times 2/7 times there. We don't usually use x for multiplication, but it's hard to write a little dot sometimes. It doesn't pick it up. All right, so we could really just write this like this instead. 2/7 x equals 2/5. And then once we have that, we can solve it just like the one we did up top. So 2x times 5 is 10x equals 14, and then divide to get the x by itself. Okay, make sure we always want to simplify our fractions. So we have 14 over 10. We can divide both of those by 2, and we get 7/5 as our answer.